Tensions between Russia and the West remain fraught as Moscow threatens retaliatory action over Lithuania's rail transit blockade of embargoed goods. The Baltic state announced plans to halt the transport of certain goods in line with EU guidelines to and from the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. But the move sparked fury among top Kremlin officials. They pledged that the Lithuanian people would suffer the consequences of their government's actions. On Wednesday, Russia's foreign ministry said its response won't be diplomatic. Lithuania's president says he doesn't expect military confrontation, but his country is prepared if Russia attempts to disrupt power supplies. Well, for more, we're now joined by Linas Linkevičius, the former Lithuanian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Linkevičius, thank you so much for joining us again on the programme tonight. So Russia still insists this is a blockade. How do you expect it to react?
A lot of misunderstanding here. First of all, it's nothing to do with the blockade, because Kaliningrad is not blocked. Goods going on, transit of passengers also going on. They also can communicate via airways or sea. There are some restrictions, but it was known back in mid-March. You said it's Lithuania introduced this, so to say, sanctions, but it's decided by European Union, and Lithuania implements these decisions. And the list of goods which are banned, as I said, it was known. So this emotions were a bit overdone, so to say, and as usually. And language definitely threatening, fierce, but this language of threatening becoming traditional communication of Russia.
So with this, as you say, threatening language and the fact that Lithuania is literally only following EU obligations, do you think this row could become a flashpoint in the war? Kaliningrad, of course, is hugely strategically important for Russia.
Well, it's no reason, as I said, but if you want to escalate, you shouldn't. Russia doesn't need any reason. It would be pretext, and there should be reasons for the pretext. And depends on the attitude. Since they started all that noise, they were prepared, actually. It was not very sincere when they started to direct these arrows to Vilnius instead of Brussels. If they need some clarifications, they can ask about that. But a couple of days ago, we also gave a diplomatic note to Russia explaining in details what these restrictions meaning. And there's a clear schedule. Something is starting to be prohibited middle of June, something middle of August will be materials of construction, alcohol. Later, by the end of the year, will be oil products and so on and so forth. Railways were also informed on their own level, so communication is also taking place and should be any surprise. But as I said, if you are focused on escalation, you can do that without any reason.
So do you think this is then a lot of just hot air coming out from Russia, or is this something more sinister?
As usually, but also I believe they would like to, I don't know, elicit some sympathy or to make some confusion, hesitations, doubts on the side of Europe. Who will blink first, so to say? There are some voices already, and we heard about that. Maybe we went too far, maybe it was too much. But definitely it's not comfortable. It's not convenient when you have restrictions. But so therefore, why these sanctions are introduced? Not to make life easier. And of course, it's difficult. But again, it's nothing to do with the blockade. Real blockade taking place in Odessa port in Ukraine. Real blockade is with regard to the ban of export of grain, which will be by far not compatible damage to entire world. And very difficult to compare all these things, but nevertheless they are trying. It's a good try. I hope we will stay united. I hope we'll stay principled and consistent.
And then just lastly, and very quickly, Mr. Linkevičius, we've got this big EU summit on Thursday. Do you expect the EU to put more sanctions in place on Russia?
As far as I know, it's not discussed, but I believe it must take place. We know how difficult it's happening and how difficult to reach agreements, especially on energy. Even the sanctions, those which were agreed, it's not enough. If somebody would ask, is it enough to end the war? The answer is no, it's not enough. That means we're not doing enough. And this is exactly where we should focus in the future. Support to Ukraine, but also keep pressure on Russia and not to extend any fatigue on that.
OK, thank you so much, Mr. Lenkavicius, former Lithuanian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining us on the programme tonight. Thank you. Now, 20 people have been killed as Russia intensifies its attack on Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. Further south, Russian forces fired 7 missiles at the port city of Mykolaiv, killing at least 1 person. Ukrainian officials say they have also lost several settlements near eastern Luhansk region. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces claim to have scored a victory against the invading forces after launching a new attempt to retake Snake Island in the Black Sea. Kyiv says it has caused significant losses on the island, with up to 50 Russian troops killed by airstrikes. Turkish and Russian officials met in Moscow to discuss the safe exit of Turkish ships and grain export from Ukrainian ports. Following constructive talks, a Turkish cargo ship left Ukraine's Russian-occupied port of Mariupol on Wednesday, according to the Turkish Defense Ministry. Well, for more, let's cross over now to Galina Polonskaya. Galina, good to see you there. So Turkish ships, as we were saying just there, they're now leaving Mariupol. Are we closer to Russia lifting its blockade of Ukrainian ports?
Well, Miriam, well, for the first time since the invasion, a foreign ship has safely left Mariupol. So we can say that now we have a real reason for a hope. Indeed, there were talks between Russia and Turkey in Moscow, and the Turkish Defense Ministry in a statement reported that as a result of those talks, a cargo ship from Turkey left safely Mariupol, and moreover, reportedly generals who chaired the talks were assigned to operate a hotline between Russia, Ukraine and Turkey to solve the crisis. And there is more. Apparently, the talks will continue. According to sources close to Turkish presidency, they will continue in Istanbul, and it will be Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and the United Nations. But we also know that Russia still denies any responsibility for the food crisis, and Vladimir Putin spoke about this again a couple of days ago. It says that it is Ukraine that should clear the sea from the mines. Ukraine is really worried that the situation could be used against the city of Odessa, so those problems are still there. But let's say that today we saw a first step, and maybe it will be the first step of the end of this crisis.
Indeed. And Galina, staying with Russia, but sort of switching gears a little bit, it's a symbolic day in Moscow. Russia is set to observe the anniversary of Nazi Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union. Talk us through that.
Well, exactly. The 22nd of June marks the start of what is called in Russia the Great Patriotic War. 81 years ago, the forces of Hitler invaded the Soviet Union. So today is the day of sorrow and remembrance of those millions of victims of the Second World War, and there were various memorial ceremonies across the whole country. Vladimir Putin laid traditionally a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier next to the Kremlin. Millions of hundreds of people carried candles and sang patriotic songs. And if you ask Russians today what they think about this day, most will say that it is sacred, that this memory is sacred, and independent sociologists say that actually it's the moral capital of victory over Nazis, and the rhetoric of the fight against Nazis, regardless of who will be designed a Nazi today, is used to justify what was described by Vladimir Putin, the special military operation of denazification of Ukraine on the 24th of February. We do not hear a single word about the number of victims of those who died in Ukraine in recent months, and a new history is being written in Russia today. Moscow authorities reported that the square where the US embassy is located right now will be renamed. Now it is called the Square of the Donetsk People's Republic, after one of the separatist pro-Russian republics in the east of Ukraine, which was actually recognized by Russia just hours before the invasion.